It is a moment, but he is never remiss in his duty toward the perfection of his creatures. And man is involved in this process, this evolutionary development. Now, I'm saying that to come to this. Allah is called Maliki Yawmiddin. He's called the master of the day of requital, the day of judgment, the day when all souls are recompensed or paid for what they have earned. He is not king or lord, but master. Now, since this 7 oft repeated verses was revealed to Prophet Muhammad 1400 years ago, it has a very specific reference to a period of time. A period of time when he, who is the master of the law of requital, will be judging the affairs of men, setting nations down, destroying and building up until the kingdom of Islam or heaven is established on the earth. Now, this prayer that is given to the Muslims, which is to all humanity, is a prayer that extols the worship of God and God alone. For the mistakes that we all have made in our development is we have worshiped things and objects that we should not have worshiped. And it is this worship of other than God that has delayed our movement toward perfection. So since Almighty God wants to perfect us, he cannot perfect us until he perfects our worship. Your worship has to be perfected of the divine being in order for us to benefit from his guidance and move us on the road to that perfection that he has ordained for us. But when we stop short of this development and begin to worship things that are beneath us, or that we should not worship, then we absolutely fall down or delay the process. The process will continue, but there's a punishment that will come to get you back on the road that you should have been on when you worship other than the Lord of creation. So this prayer makes it clear that it is he and he alone that we serve. Yes. And it is he and he alone that we worship. And it is he and he alone that we continuously call on for help. Now that's a very important thing to understand, brothers and sisters. We get messed up in our lives because we worship things and not the originator of all things. You see? We worship forces and powers rather than the originator of all force and power, in whom is all force and power. We corrupt our worship and even our communication with the divine being by raising the servants of God to a level where they become equal with one that they have no equality with. There is no prophet or messenger that has any equality with the Lord of creation, Jesus included. Please, beloved Christians, do not get angry with me. A man born 2,000 years ago from a woman has no equality with the originator of creation and even his own origination. This Quran is here to correct the deviations. Okay? The Quran says none comes to Allah except as an honored servant. God has no partners. He has no associates. He is not in need of our assistance. Listen carefully. We are in need of His. Therefore, we must pray. And we must act on the principles of our prayer. And with His assistance, we can grow into a powerful being to control the forces of nature, but not yet an object of worship. Because as long as we are flesh and blood, the flesh and the blood will pass away. But that which is eternal is only that which can be worshiped by us. Because that which is eternal is ever in motion, ever in perfection, ever in its evolutionary development toward the Creator. And only that force can we bow down to, which is truth and the Spirit of Almighty God. We can bow to a man in honor and recognition of what is in the man. But what is in the man is not the man. What is in the man of good and of wisdom is the God. So when you bow to the man, don't make a mistake thinking that you are bowing to this finite being that came yesterday and will leave tomorrow morning. You are bowing to that in the man that is immutable, unchangeable, and eternal. When I bow to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in honor of him, the mistake that I made in my infancy was that I worshiped my teacher. But I was not faulted for that by God because I was a child. And as black people in the wilderness of North America, the white Americans had reduced black people to such a state that God needed not to give us a leader, but He needed to give us a mother, someone to nurture us, someone to grow us again into the wisdom of God, because we were totally backward, in total darkness. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was risen up among us as a mother given to a people who were motherless and fatherless. And when a man loved us as he loved us and taught us as he taught us, we held on to him even as a baby holds on to the apron string of its mother and knows nothing of God but says mama whenever it needed something. But every child must outgrow mother. Every child must not outgrow saying and recognizing that this is your mother, but outgrow the worship of your mother. Because your mother is not a perfect individual. And if you worship imperfection, you will take on imperfection. But if the object of God is for you to be made perfect, then you must grow out of the worship of imperfection and bow down only to that which is perfect. Then you can become what you bow down to. Is that clear? All praises due to Allah. This is why in the Catholic Church you have statues and stones. The Catholic priest will say these are not objects of worship, but they are given to you as sort of a ability to something to give you the ability to connect with the object through this object. Well, we can take that for a minute. But when people are maturing spiritually, they must never look to stone and wood or images to give them an idea of a divine being. We must not genuflect before a statue that cannot hear, cannot see, cannot think or plan for us and think we are worshiping God properly. When you're a child, that can be accepted from you. But as a grown person who wants to mature into the proper worship of Almighty God, then you must stop worshiping any stone, any statue, any image, any likeness of the divine being, because you cannot make a likeness of God in a physical way. Because physical things, by the nature of their physical properties, will pass away. But the essence of God is not seen with a physical eye. This is why when someone says, I would like to see God, how would you like to see him?
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
How would you like to see him? I would like to see him too. Everybody wants to see God. That's natural. But how would you like to see him? Oh, there he goes. Here he comes. There he is. What would you be looking at? You don't see God with physical eyes. You don't see with physical eyes. You see by the development of your powers of discernment beyond physical properties. Then when you develop the powers of discernment, you see into things. And when you see into things, you don't see what the outside presents. You see what is unseen, and you hear what is unheard. Am I making sense to you? All right. Oh, the time is just rolling, but I must finish this little subject. The Muslim wants to be guided to the right path. And the right path has to be the right knowledge, the right understanding of God, and the right worship of the divine being. Once you get the right faith, the right belief, the right worship, the right principles, the right action, then you start evolving day after day after day into a new creature. The problem with the people of religion is they think they know. And that is dangerous. Preachers talk as though they know. Oh yes, I know God. But that's a hell of a statement. I know God. I know. How do you know the unknown? How do you know the infinite? How could you know? If you know him, you are equal to him. And since you are not his equal, how could you ever know? And as long as you can never know, you can never get familiar with. And as long as you can never get familiar with him, then every day is a search for him. Every day is a longing for him. Oh, praise be to Allah. I want you to please listen and concentrate on what we're saying. Because to say I know him and I know the truth and I got it, you just lost it. Just that split second. Because the moment you say you know, you contented. And then you're contented with imperfection. Then you start the process of degeneration or death. God is not someone that you know. God is someone that you learn about. And you grow into the knowledge of. But as infinite as he is as long as you would have to be in existence to know him. And since you're not going to be here that long, the best you can do is comprehend what he permits. And then understand. And then understand that what he permits us to comprehend only is enough to get us to the right path. but to make us humble enough to know that as long as men live on this earth, there will be growth into the knowledge of God. This is why we cannot worship prophets. No matter how great the prophets are, we must only follow the principle of the prophet, lest the prophet enslave us. You didn't hear me. Not that the prophets in and of themselves enslave you, but it is the adherents of the prophets that enslave people in the name of the prophets. So you have Muslim slaves who are enslaved to the traditions of Prophet Muhammad, but they never understand that God is ever living. And this is why when Muhammad died, Umar said to Abu Bakr, if you say he's dead, it'll be war in here. I'm not quoting him perfectly, but that's the spirit. Don't you go up and say to the people that the prophet is dead. If you do, we're going to war. Abu Bakr paid no attention to Umar. He knew that Umar was emotional. And he knew that a man that meant so much to Umar and Abu Bakr had been taken from the scene. But Abu Bakr knew a little better than Umar that Prophet Muhammad did not want to be worshipped. Neither did Jesus want to be worshipped. So the Quran, the verse was spoken at the announcement of the death of Muhammad. Muhammad is but a messenger. Listen to these words. Muhammad is but a messenger. Indeed, messengers have passed away before him. If Muhammad dies or is killed, would you turn back on your heels? See? Muhammad died, but Allah is the ever living. So Abu Bakr, those of you who worship Muhammad, know that Muhammad is dead. Those of you who worship Allah know that Allah is the ever living. What is he telling us? If you worship your prophets, you die with them.
Yes.
If you worship your prophets, you don't grow beyond them. Prophets are for your guidance, but you must go beyond your prophets.
Yes.
But if you sit down and worship Jesus, you will never see where Jesus went and then go a step beyond him.
Go ahead. Yes, sir.
If you worship Muhammad, you will never see where Muhammad went. So instead of walking beyond where he showed you the light, go on to God. That's where they're leading you. Since he never said he was God, then go to God. Go to God. Don't worship your prophets. Worship God and God alone. And this is why the world is messed up. You take Karl Marx.
Come on.
You say, I'm a Marxist. I could never say a statement like that. I could never say I'm a Mohammedan.
Come on. Come on.
I could never say I am a Jesusite.
Come on.
I could never say I am an Abrahamite.
Yes, sir.
I can never say I am a Sunni. I can never say I am a Shiite. You can't put me in your limited schools of thought. You cannot put me behind men of limited vision who saw darkly and admitted that they saw darkly. How then can I call myself after Paul or Peter or any of the disciples? I must follow God.
Yes, sir.
And if I follow what Jesus said, Jesus did not tell me or you or anyone to worship him. He said, I go to prepare a place that where I am, you may be also. He was going to the Father.
Yes, sir.
He was ascending to the Father. Well, did he stop along the way to Wendy's for a burger?
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
don't you stop. As long as your life lives, as long as God gives you and me life, we are supposed to be on a pilgrimage to God. And if we meet our prophets, we are to honor them. We are to respect them. We should try to pattern our lives after the principles that they pattern their life after. But worship of a prophet is unworthy. Even though the Quran does not impute sin to any prophet, we know that no man is sinless. And since no man is sinless and no man yet has been perfected, when you meet the perfected one, then you can be like that. But when you meet imperfection and say, I want to be like imperfection, then that's what you become like. Okay. I hope I didn't upset you. Now I'd like to go to the New Testament. In the New Testament, here is a sentence that intrigued me. God is love. God is love. And when you take these words just in English, you see a subject, a predicate, and a predicate nominative. When you have the verb to be, you have an equivalent on one side of that verb that is equal to the other. When you say God is love, you can turn it around and say love is God. I don't think we can say it just like that. Love is of God, but God is yet bigger than that. But I understand, I think, what the writer meant. I'd like to share it with you. God is love. Don't isolate it. And when somebody says, who is God? You say, God is love, honey. Don't isolate that from the context in which such words are spoken. You cannot isolate Al-Fatiha from the context in which the words were revealed. Bear with me, please. It is love that this world does not have. You suffer, black people, and all people suffer from a lack of love. Your souls cry out to be loved. And because we live in a world of injustice, wickedness cannot fulfill the desire of the human spirit to be loved. In fact, when someone does you evil, they produce the very opposite, which is hatred. Hatred then produces murder. Do you remember how they used to call the Muslims hate teachers? Do you remember how they used to say that Elijah Muhammad teaches hate? Because he classified the wickedness of the whites against the darker people of the world and themselves as Satan or devil. Elijah Muhammad was not wrong. No. And all of you who are listening, white or black, when your evil is preponderant over good, and good, by the way, is not what you think good is. Oh, I think he's a good person. What makes him good? Because he smiles at me, or he shares his reefer with me, or when he goes and buys a fifth of whiskey, you know, he turns me on. Or what makes a man good? What is the criterion for the measurement of good? It is not what you think it is. It is what God has laid down by his law. That is good. So when we measure up to the law of God, we are doing good. Do you follow what I am saying? Okay, but now the argument here is that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was saying that when your evil outweighs your good, then you have become a servant of sin, a servant of evil, a worshiper of evil. Then when you worship that, you take on the characteristics of what you worship. So if you have become an evil person, you are worshiping evil, therefore you become devil.
Yes.
Clear, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, if white people, listen to me, were imbued with the love of God, the beneficence and the mercy of God, would we and the Indians and the dark people of the world be in the condition that we're in?
No, sir.
Is our condition the result of love, or is it the result of hate? Then if God is love, then where would you expect to find Satan? See? Satan is found in an unjustified hatred. Now there is a justified dislike. When we do evil to one another, we dislike each other. And since there's so much wrongdoing among us, there is great hatred also among us. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
If I treat you wrong, can you love me?
No.
Even though I'm your near of kin, can you love me?
No, sir.
With a Christian perspective, you may say, well, there's divine in him. But as long as you can't get it out of him, and he or she continues to do evil, and that evil adversely affects you, you are not going to love any person who consistently does evil by you. I don't understand how and why white people generally want and expect humanity to love them when you have done nothing to earn the love of the dark people of the world. No. I don't know why any evildoer will expect to be loved except by other evildoers like yourself. But when you are affected by evil adversely, it's very difficult for you to love the perpetrator of such wickedness, except you understand that they don't understand. White folks are not doing evil because they don't understand. You can't say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They were doing this in the Garden of Eden, and they're still doing it now. So, do you mean after God sends them prophets to educate them, to warn them, to teach them, to guide them, and they murder the prophets, reject the prophets, that they don't know what they're doing? Reagan knows what he's doing.
Yes, he does.
Meese knows what he's doing. The government knows what he's doing. Pharaoh knew what he was doing. Belshazzar and Nebuchadnezzar knew what they were doing. Caesar knew what he was doing. So no, you can't have that kind of compassion on them saying they don't know what they're doing. You don't know what you're doing because you have been made blind, deaf, and dumb, and an ignorant and foolish people. And there are many of the white people who are ignorant also. 85% of them are poison animal eaters. 85% of the black, the brown, the red, the yellow, and the white have been misused by 10% of their own population, who are the bloodsuckers of the poor, whose desire is to keep the poor ignorant so that this 10% can make the poor their slaves, that the 10% can live in luxury at the expense of the masses of the people. So somebody has to wake up the masses. Somebody has to be willing to sacrifice his or her life to see
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. I greet you, my beloved brothers and sisters. In the greeting words of peace, we say it in the ancient tongue of Arabic. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, 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 dear beloved family, brothers, sisters, friends, and even those crazy enemies out there. Welcome to another episode of the Imagination Show. My name is Brother Leo Muhammad, and sitting alongside me is my beloved helper, Sister Claudia Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum, family, and welcome to another edition of the Imagination Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you taking your time, precious time, to come and sit with us this evening, this morning, or this afternoon, wherever you are on the planet Earth. Thank you so much. And I pray that you are all safe and well, and I'm going to say, enjoying the countless blessings from Allah God.
That's
We
right.
are blessed. We are all blessed. Just think of the smallest things, the favors that Allah is blessing us with, because He doesn't actually need us, but He's doing us a favor by keeping us present here on this earth.
Absolutely. Praise be to Allah. Thank you, beloved. Well, dear family, here we go. We are into another episode. And as always, I want to say to you, please communicate with us via the chat. Let us know where you are on the planet. Let us know where you are able to view or listen to our broadcast. And also, dear family, call a friend, a family member, a loved one. Let them know that the Imagination Show is live and direct, coming out of the United Kingdom each and every Thursday evening at 6:30 p.m. That's when we actually begin speaking, but we're playing the minister, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, from around 6. So feel free always to tune in and give yourself half an hour of absolutely priceless spiritual food that can sustain you for a week and a month and a year beyond, if we really listen and actually absorb what is being taught. Because I'm telling you, dear family, there are no teachers today out there. There's plenty of preachers, but there's very few teachers who are actually teaching the people that which they need to know in order to have the requisite knowledge in order to make proper progress as human beings. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is par excellence when it comes to the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and really trying to help human beings, humanity, to be better.
Resurrecting.
To raising us from a dead condition.
That's right. And He's given us some oil, the oil for our lamps.
That's right, because it's going to get dark.
That's right.
It's going to get dark, dear family. And so, yes, we thank you so much for being here. And we pray that Allah will bless us to really have a wonderful session today. And just before, let me just see something. Yeah, let me see here. Okay, dear family, welcome to Thursday, the 25th of April, the Image and Nation show, episode 127. 127 shows. And today's title is King Kong Breakdown. King Kong Breakdown. It was suggested to me last week by one of our wonderful viewers that they would like to hear or see that King Kong breakdown. And I can tell you from now, again, I've done this on several occasions over the years, and it's been a long time in truth since I've revisited King Kong. But I can tell you from now that there's no way that I'm going to be able to really finish this week, and it may go over into next week, maybe even another week. We don't know, but we'll see, dear family. But what is the purpose? The purpose is to show us how in the popular culture, how things are used, how things are used to influence human beings. And oftentimes, we don't even realize how we are being affected by popular music, films, television, billboards, on advertisements, magazines, newspapers, the so-called news, and we can go on and on and on. There are so many things which accidentally influence us, and then there are things which are deliberately pointed at us that sometimes we do not comprehend, we do not perceive what's really taking place. I don't know if you can remember, Sister Claudia, you and I were having a conversation one time, and we were reflecting on how sometimes when you have a conversation now about a particular thing, the next thing, it pops up on your phone.
Oh, yes, yes.
Because whether we really appreciate this or not, like the enemy with these smartphones that we have, they're listening to everything that we're saying. They know what we're saying in our homes. You think that you can turn these phones off? You can't turn them off, dear family. And I know some of you, conspiracy theory. Well, you can live in your little bubble and think that everything is benign and everything is wonderful, and we haven't got no wicked demons out there who are trying to hurt humanity. But I beg to differ. And I'm saying, dear family, there are people who are working 24 hours, 7 days a week. The wicked really don't sleep in terms of their ability to do evil. And they manipulate humanity through many of these mediums that we watch or listen to or interact with in one form or another. And, King Kong as a movie is, for a lot of people, I guess, just entertainment. And, they like to watch this monster, being captured, presumably in Africa, and then being brought into the Western world and then wreaking havoc and then basically being killed or dying. And, some people, when they go to the movies, they sit on the edge of their seats, terrified or afraid or having nervous tension over what they're observing on the screen, because the reason why that happens, dear family, is because consciously, you and I, when we go to the cinema, we know that it's only a movie. We know that it's not real, so to speak, even though sometimes the legend may come up at the start to say this is based on a true story. And so because we know it's a true story, it can actually move us a little bit more because we buy into or we empathize with the character in one form or another. But whether we appreciate it or not, the reality is that the subconscious mind cannot distinguish between fantasy and reality. And what that means is that even though consciously we know that it's only a film, subconsciously, if it's a good film, if it's a well-made film, if the director and the actors have put in the requisite tension and suspense and drama and action, it can have an effect on us whereby before we know it, well, in fact, not before we know it, but in 8 minutes and 20 seconds, that's how long it takes for the blood to circulate from our feet to our head, from head to toe. Within 8 minutes and 20 seconds, we will find ourselves immersed in the plot, and the subconscious mind doesn't realize or appreciate whether what we're observing is just a movie or whether it's a real life thing that we're involved in. And so therefore we can find our emotions getting all caught up and involved in the action that we're watching on that screen. That's how powerful movies are. And I've said this before, so I'll say it again, that, you know, the people may not appreciate why it's called movies. We may think it's called a movie because the pictures move, but in reality, it's a movie because it moves the masses of the people. And that's why so much money is invested in making movies, making films, and you have these big premieres, and you will have, you know, important persons, including prime ministers and presidents and other types of so-called dignitaries coming out to premieres because they understand the power of the movies. And so, you know, with that as a foundation, dear family, I wanted to get into this, and I hope you are all good. And again, you know, if you have a question relating to what it is that we are talking about, and then we will endeavor, if it be the will of God, to answer your question. Let us know where you are, how you're feeling. And as Sister Claudia said, thank you for tuning in again this evening. Dear family, the King Kong movie franchise is 91 years old. That's interesting, isn't it? Somebody else is 91 years old, and in a little while, in a week or so, couple of weeks, we'll talk to you more about that, inshallah. But the King Kong movie franchise is 91 years old. According to Wikipedia, King Kong is an American monster media franchise which consists of 13 films, as well as television, novels, comic books, video games, attractions, and other merchandise. It's big, big business, this whole thing about King Kong. The franchise is centered on King Kong, a giant ape living on a primordial island inhabited by prehistoric creatures. Now that's interesting. And I hope also that, you know, sometimes when we are on the Imagination show and we begin to break things down, sometimes we'll go to the dictionary and we'll break down the words. Sometimes we won't, but I would encourage us, if we don't understand what a particular word means, grab your dictionary, man. Grab that phone and look it up, because these words are not used accidentally. They're used because they do have deep and profound meanings to them, which is why they're used. What is a primordial island inhabited by prehistoric creatures? We should want to know what's being spoken about on Wikipedia when they make mention of such things. Let me just move something out of the way. Okay. What is the meaning of primordial? It says that which is first created or developed. Now, don't forget, they're talking about some island here. That which is first created or developed, primeval, existing in or persisting from the beginning. That's very, very interesting. You see, first developed and persisting from the beginning. And then it says, as of a solar system or universe. So in the beginning was the universe, the solar system, darkness. It's very deep, dear family, because again, as I said, for some people, when they watch the movie, they just stay on the surface.
Entertainment.
But the makers, they're going deep, and they understand that they're talking to different levels of audiences who understand really what's going on. It says, earliest formed in the growth of an individual or organ. Again, you see, it's going to the beginnings, the earliest formed, and also fundamental or primary. See, all of this definition for primordial is really talking about something that is of an original entity, the beginning, the start of something. Then, if we then move over to the word prehistoric, what is the meaning of prehistoric? It is of or relating to a time or a period prior to recorded history. Now, I'm sure that for many of us, we've read that on numerous occasions. We've heard about prior to recorded history. But have we ever asked ourselves the question, when we say prior to recorded history, whose recorded history? You see, because there are a set of people on our planet whose history is so new, is so recent, that there's a lot of history that's gone before them, which they classify as prehistory or prehistoric. Very, very important, dear family, that we understand this. It then says, and then as an example, the definition given in the dictionary states, the dinosaur is a prehistoric beast. Now, again, you know, the question I would ask is, how do they know? You see, because if they're brand new to our planet, how do they know anything about prehistory or before there was a recorded history? You see, we have to question these things, because if we're not careful, a wise, crooked deceiver will make us to believe that he knows something about a history that he's got no record of or no history of. I put a picture here of so-called dinosaurs. Look at the length of that neck. Wow. You know, I never forget when Jurassic Park came out and we went to the cinema and saw that movie. And I remember people literally, and I think they interviewed some people on the news as well. They were saying, oh, they're so realistic. And then I was saying to myself, in my mind, I was asking myself the question, but realistic compared to what?
That's right.
Realistic compared to a goat, maybe I can understand that. Realistic compared to a cow, realistic compared to a horse, you know, because these are creatures, okay, that, you know, we know about, we see. But how can you say that the depiction of a dinosaur is realistic if you've never, ever seen one? And I know what some of you are saying, yeah, but I have seen a dinosaur. No, well, no, you haven't. You've seen a depiction. And we'll go a bit deeper into that as we go through. And by the way, dear family, you know, in doing a King Kong breakdown, we have to lay a foundation, okay? We have to, like a good lawyer, lay a foundation for our case as we go through, because it's important. We can't just try to start talking right on the subject without first establishing where that subject comes from and how it's formed in the first place. What is the meaning of dinosaur? According to the dictionary, the name dinosaur comes from the Greek words for monstrous lizard. Monstrous lizard. The popular myth states that dinosaurs became extinct suddenly about 65 million years ago, and that the scientists of this world now believe that their extinction was caused by the impact of a large asteroid on the Earth. Again, you know, when you watch these documentaries where, I don't know, you got paleontologists who are the people who are supposed to be experts in dinosaurs, or anthropologists, you know, talking about the origins of human beings and so on and so forth, or ancient things that have occurred on our planet. Listen to the language that they used in what I just read, that the scientists of this world now believe. Do you know, dear family, that what you believe is irrelevant? Do you understand that lots of people believe in lots of foolish things, and what they believe is of no relevance because the belief is, it cannot be backed up by evidence? And so that's what we got to do. We got to listen to the language. They didn't say the scientists know. They said the scientists believe that their extinction was caused by the impact of a large asteroid on the Earth. They can't show you no evidence of no large asteroid hitting the Earth. They talk about, and you know, I put there, the popular myth states that the dinosaurs became extinct suddenly. Okay, so when you say suddenly, what do you mean? Abracadabra, was it like that? Or was it over a period of 100 years? Or was it over a period of 530 years? Or was it over a period of 500,000 years? Because you say up here that they're 65 million years old. How do you know that when you've only been here a few days, according to God's calendar? We'll get into that. But just think about it, that's all, because you see, again, you know, these things are things which are quoted all the time. They're put out there in the popular culture, and people just, it just washes over people, and they just take it in, and they believe that these people actually know what they're talking about. Could you just read the next thing for me, please? However,
despite the many powerful images given to us by Hollywood, which now dominate the imagination, the word dinosaur is still often used to describe someone who is perceived or believed to be old-fashioned or stuck in their ways, unwilling or unable to adapt to the so-called modern times.
okay, so think about that one now. You see, because Hollywood has given us these images of so-called dinosaurs, but understand that the word dinosaur is still often used to describe someone, not a thing, not a creature, but someone who is perceived or believed, you know, and again, perception is not necessarily fact. And like I said before, belief is not necessarily true, okay? But someone who is perceived or believed to be old-fashioned. You know, you see the way I'm dressed? For some people in the modern era, this is really old-fashioned. See, this is old-fashioned. Why are you putting on that old-fashioned suit and that old-fashioned bow tie? But I don't perceive it as old-fashioned. I perceive it as something which is absolutely right up to date if we understand the time and what must be done. I'm not even going to go into that too deep. But think about that. Someone who is perceived or believed to be old-fashioned or stuck in their ways. Let me tell you something, dear family. You know, there's a scripture in the Bible that says God changes not. Just think, he changes not, okay? So again, you'll have people come to you and tell you, oh man, you know, why don't you try this, or why don't you try that, or you're stuck in your ways. Well, sometimes to be steadfast in a particular way is a very, very important thing. See, like the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has been teaching now for 69 years. See, to some, oh, he's stuck in his ways. But to some of us, in the Holy Quran, that's called being steadfast. Not stuck in some negative way, but certainly steadfast in sticking resolutely to the truth. But we live in a world where they want you to flip-flop and be all over the place, and you can't be trusted to maintain a course of action for any degree or any length of time. I hope you are following what we're saying here, dear family, because it's very important. Old-fashioned or stuck in their ways, unwilling or unable to adapt to the so-called modern times. Okay, so what's the so-called modern times? I've now got to not be sure about your gender, Sister Claudia. So maybe we need to now, we need to use a pronoun to describe ourselves. Maybe I need to get people now to refer to me as it, or not him, because, you know, that's some type of sexism. But you understand what I'm saying here, whereby now we are not supposed to know any longer what a woman is, or what a man is, or we are now supposed to be in a post-racial society where there's no longer any races, yet we witness racism every day of our lives. And we're supposed to be this big melting pot of nothingness. Nothing is defined anymore. Nothing is clear anymore. You see, this is fitting in with the modern times, where everything is supposed to be confused and nothing is to be distinct and clear. No, I refuse to fit into such so-called modern times. I like when things were very clear and you could distinguish between a man and a woman, and you could clearly say what was up and what was down, what was right and what was wrong. Do you understand what I'm saying? But now people are so confused because part of the satanic mind or the devil's plan is to create such confusion in the minds and the hearts of human beings that no one can discern one thing from another. And so we can be sincere even in some of the things that we say we believe, and literally, because we've been hoodwinked, because we've been fooled, we're literally sincerely wrong. And so this is what we're dealing with today, dear family. We are looking at these dinosaurs because they kind of come up in this whole scenario of King Kong. Dinosaurs, I contend, are a figment of our imaginations, which have been given to us by extremely clever, wise, crooked deceivers, with an agenda to undermine the reality of the all-wise creator God and to solidify within us the random selection Darwinian theory of evolution. This is the purpose of dinosaurs. You see, because it's not an accident that you can't find no mention from God of him creating dinosaurs. It's not an accident that dinosaurs are supposed to have lived so long ago that if that's true and there were no human beings, well, that would have been God's first creation. Or, like I said, you are to buy into the random selection theory of Darwin then, that things just randomly happened, that there was just a random big bang at some point in the distant past, and then things have just randomly changed from one system to another, from a single cell amoeba to something that resembled a tadpole at one stage, then maybe to something that then became like a fish-like type of creature. And then eventually that fish-type creature crawled out of the water and then grew some legs. And then that fish-like creature that's now grown legs then grew a tail and climbed into a tree. And then from that tree, that fish-like creature who is now in a tree with tail and fur all over him, from that then evolves a human being. Really? And when you point out to those who come with Darwin's theory of evolution that, well, there appears to be a missing link, because we still got apes, we still got monkeys. So how is it that you've got this man now who I'm using a computer here, I've got a mobile phone, smartphone, I've got smart fridge, you've got smart this, smart that. How is it that you still got these monkeys if we evolved from them? I mean, you know, they tell you there's a missing link. Yeah, the missing link is in your theory. And remember, dear family, that this Darwin's theory is exactly that. It's a theory. It's not proven fact. And there's so many holes in it. That's not our subject. I'm not going to really waste too much time on it. But I'm just saying that it's just really, really important that we really begin to break these things down and begin to understand his wisdom.
That question
Go ahead.
From Jay Christopher. I don't know about dinosaurs, but dragon is in the Bible. What about dragon?
Yeah, that's good. We're going to come on to dragon. But just suffice to say, let me just say this very quickly on that, because it's an important question. You see, a dragon, dear family, they've given us a mythological creature that is fire breathing and flies through the air. Dear family, there is no such thing. There never was, there isn't now, and there never will be. But there is a dragon on our planet who drags on humanity and drags people down. You know, again, see, think about your scriptures, think about your Bible, think about the Bible talking about in the day of judgment, the sheep and the goat will be separated. Do you really think that God is talking about sheep and goats? He's not talking about sheep and goats. He's talking about human beings with those characteristics. If you observe sheep, they are very, very docile when it comes to being able to follow a shepherd and submissive. But when you observe the goat, he's got a different character altogether. Rebellious. He might headbutt the shepherd, and he might try to snatch the shepherd's staff and eat it. It's two different characteristics of the human being. And the dragon is no different. You see, you know, I watch people nowadays vaping. My God. You see the amount of smoke?
Coming out of the car.
Coming out of the car window or coming out of their mouth as they walk down the road. See, there's only one creature on the planet that breathes fire into their lungs and then exhales smoke. And it's a human being. And then if you're talking about flying in the air and breathing fire, well, look at these warplanes. And why do you think that on the World War II warplanes, and even some of the modern ones, they paint a mouth with teeth? Because that's your dragon, piloted by a man, So it's not even the machine that's the dragon, it's the man who's the dragon, but the machine becomes a part of the man, and that is the dragon. Because what does it do? It drags humanity down. Do you understand that people are being absolutely buried today under bombs and bullets? That's not the elevation of humanity. That is the destruction, the pulling down, the dragging down. Drag on. You know, I don't know how many is tuned in from the UK. I don't think they say the same thing in the States, but when I was growing up, what the part of the language that we used as young people when we were smoking together, whether it was cigarettes or weed, sometimes you would say, give us a drag on that. Give us a drag. See, smoking. But again, fire breathing, drag on. It's not a creature, dear family. Get that cartoon nonsense out of your head. These things are very powerful, and they come primarily from Hollywood, and they've been placed into, I think yesterday it was the St. George's Day. I think it was either yesterday or the day before. And the myth around St. George is George and the dragon. You see? But again, there was no dragon that any man called George killed. It has a different meaning. I hope you're following, dear family, because you'd be surprised the kind of things which have been inculcated into the hearts and minds of human beings that preoccupy and take up space where knowledge, wisdom, and understanding should reside. That space is full of nonsense. And what that does, it disallows us from thinking clearly about reality. I hope you get what we're saying, brothers and sisters, because it's some serious, serious business. Okay, brothers and sisters, an Englishman by the name of Richard Owen coined the word dinosaur. Imagine. So you're trying to tell us that there's something 65 million years old, but Richard Owen comes along and coins a word to describe it. Originally, the word was dinosauria. In 1841, he coined this word, dinosaur, and it originates from two Greek words, dinos, meaning terrible, powerful, wonderous, and saurus, meaning lizard. Think about it, dear family. Sometimes Richard Owen used the term fearfully great. That was what he said that dinos meant, fearfully great. I want you to think about what these people are afraid of. And he used fearfully great to describe his dinosaurs. And according to dictionary.com, it states that before 1841, this is how it's written as well in the dictionary.com, you know, we think people just called them dragons. But Richard Owen said, no, these are dinosaurs. We think people just call them dragons. And by the way, I've just spent a little bit of time because I was answering the question from our brother. This dragon, which is another myth passed off as historical fact, yet remains non-existent. They don't exist. But as you can see, we've got a picture of a dragon. You see, and imagine a little child now who was born yesterday, and you're showing him that. What do you think the child is going to think? That that thing exists. And if you buy him then a toy dragon, because they got toy dragons, And then if you reinforce that with a cartoon about dragons, and then later on, he goes and sees a movie about dragons, and then there's a Walt Disney film about dragons, and a child who is looking after a baby dragon, and then the dragon grows up, and the dragon is actually very nice to this particular child and actually protects the child. I mean, we can go on.
Isn't that on Avatar? Weren't they riding dragons on?
I don't think they were dragons, but they were like a creature.
Yes.
From another planet. And if I remember rightly, it wasn't in the movie. What's the very famous black movie that came out? Wakanda with what was the famous movie? Black Panther. Wasn't there some type of creature as well that they were riding in that, like a dragon type of thing? But again, these are made up. It's made up, family. And now with CGI and special effects, man, they can show you anything and make it look believable. Go ahead.
Yes,
sister.
but isn't in this country they have the Natural History Museum, the dinosaurs in there.
Yeah, we're
Taking up.
no, but go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, but that's what I remember when I was at school, going to that museum.
Dinosaurs, yes. Yes, we're gonna get into that. But it's just incredible, dear family, how deception is the order of the day. And it's become an art form. See, this is art that you're looking at here.
That's right.
Okay, this is an artist rendition. And there's attention to detail.
That's right.
The wing looks like a bat wing. They're almost see-through. You can see like bones, and then you can see like the thing is transparent. I mean, but there's no such creature. When you go on a visit to London, where we live in the UK, there's dragons everywhere.
Oh, yes.
There are dragons that border the city of London, which is the financial district of the world, really, if you understand what the city of London represents. Again, that's not our subject. We're not going to go into that, but there's dragons everywhere. Images of dragons and statues of dragons, and even on their buildings, you see, because, and by the way, they're putting those on there, not because they believe in dragons as such, but because they know what the dragon actually means and what it represents. We're the ones who don't have a clue. I'm talking about the masses of the people, and why you would have a people who would want to be represented by the image of a dragon. And I'm not, just really picking on white people here, because the Chinese also have this dragon, okay, in their culture. Okay, dear family, I hope you are good. Now, the so-called Komodo dragon is a modern endangered species named after the only place where they are found in the wild, which is the Komodo Island or Lesser Sunda Islands in Indonesia. This is something that's been given the name dragon, okay? Komodo dragons are the biggest and heaviest lizards on Earth. Full-grown adults can reach 10 feet or 3 meters long and weigh more than 300 pounds or 140 kilograms. Most weigh about 150 pounds, which is approximately 70 kilograms. This is called a Komodo dragon, okay? But I can assure you, dear family, it doesn't breathe fire, it doesn't fly, and it's a creature, like you have a creature called a rhinoceros that is massive, big, heavy, like this creature here. But The only thing about the Komodo dragon that you might, you could say, you could say he's got a fiery mouth, in the sense that his saliva is so toxic that if he bites you, he bites creatures, and the creature runs away. He just follows that creature, because that creature will soon be dead, because his saliva is so poisonous that he can't bite you and you survive. Okay, he may not kill you with the bite itself immediately by crushing you, but the toxic nature of his saliva is such that in and of itself is poison. But then we got poisonous snakes. We got the poisonous snake in this country is called an adder. And then you got black mambas, and you got cobras, and all these deadly reptiles in Africa and other parts of the world, India and other places. And so we know that there are very dangerous creatures, but what we're trying to get away from here is the idea of these mythical fire-breathing or flying creatures that the enemy wants us to believe in. Then he puts them into movies, such as Jurassic Park, or into King Kong, and by virtue of them being in such popular movies, they become a part of the psyche of the people, and before you know it, you believe that they actually exist or existed. According to most theologians and biblical scholars, the Bible account of creation and the genesis of human existence begins 4,004 years before Jesus of 2,000 years ago. I want you to understand this, okay? And I challenge all of you theologians out there, Bible scholars, go and study, and you will see that what we're saying here is the absolute truth. According to most theologians and biblical scholars, the Bible account of creation and the genesis of human existence begins 4,004 years before Jesus of 2,000 years ago, which gives us a timeline of approximately 6,000 years to the present day. Okay, so according to them, the world, the Genesis to today is 6,000 years old. However, there does exist the pre-Adamite hypothesis, and hypothesis is it's an idea, it's an explanation, it's a postulate that we put forward that there is an alternative way to look at this, an alternative view. So there does exist the pre-Adamite hypothesis, or what some refer to as pre-Adamism, which is the theological belief that humans existed long before the 6,000-year-old biblical character called Adam. So pre-Adamism demands a more profound interpretation or understanding of the conventional Abrahamic belief that Adam and Eve were the first or the original human beings. Now, dear family, if you follow the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, you will know that we are taught that Adam and Eve, we say that's when the Caucasian was made. And that is why in the scripture, the book says, and let us make man in our image and after our likeness. You see, up to that point, God was making everything by himself. But when we get to that point, now all of a sudden the language changes and it's let us make a man in our image and after our likeness. Who's the us? Why does the Holy Quran say we, and we did this and we did? We taught say that Allah is one God. But yet in the book, it talks about we doing this and we doing that in the name or acting on behalf of God. Dear family, these things need to be understood. And these things need to be appreciated, that, you know, this idea that the world, the planet, the universal order is 6,000 years old. 6,000 years is like blinking of an eye in terms of the reality of how old this planet is. And don't forget, a minute ago, the enemy was saying that the dinosaurs were here 65 million years ago. So you can't have it both ways. On the one hand, the dinosaurs are here 65 million years ago, and then all of a sudden, you know, according to these theologians and these biblical scholars, the earth is only 6,000 years old. That's when Genesis took place. Come on now. We got to say, dear family, that the planet is not just millions of years old. The planet is not just billions of years old, but this planet is literally trillions of years old. And guess what? Man, the original man, the black man, the Asiatic black man is trillions of years old. Understand this. And we didn't meet no dinosaurs that we had to compete with or contend with in that manner or in that form. Yeah, we've got some big creatures on our planet, whales and elephants, and, you know, and many of the creatures have been made extinct by people who have hunted them and destroyed them. You know, the giraffes are still around. However, we didn't have a dinosaur period where dinosaurs ruled the earth. That's somebody's fantasy in the white world, because they've got to try to give you the impression that they understand the totality of existence in order for them to justify their rule. But brothers and sisters, I just need you to read for me, Sister Claudia, what's written in red. And just before you do, I just want to say that this image, I put this image here, it's not the original or proper image of the Sphinx that is found in the desert in Egypt, but I use this artistic depiction because it's got this crown on it. And there is a theory that the original Sphinx had a double crown on it before it was destroyed or knocked off, like the noses of those images, of the noses of those edifices were destroyed, knocked off by Napoleon's soldiers when they aimed their cannons, because they could clearly see, if you looked at the nose and the features of the face, you could see that these were black people. And so they knocked them off because they didn't want the world to realize that these huge, gargantuan structures were erected by black people and going back into ancient times. Some estimates say that this Sphinx is 15, 20,000 years old. They can't really date it. They don't know. And, you know, this idea, again, that the Bible is, you know, the end all of our history is really just a joke. This book is a very recent book when you compare it to the length of time that history has been happening, and that black people, the original people, have been here on our planet. If you could just read for me, please, sister.
So thank you for that explanation of why you use that image, because somebody did ask.
Yes. I only use it as an artistic rendition because of the crown, but I know that the real thing doesn't really look like that. But I just wanted to show that, because again, what it also represents is the royal nature of who we are. And what we have to understand about that is where royalty comes from. Royalty is not something that we can just pluck out of the air. Royalty comes from our association with the originator of the heavens and the earth. It comes from God. God is the one who determines, okay, who is of a royal lineage. You know, whether you appreciate it or not, all of these European royal families, none of them could claim royalty unless they can demonstrate and show a connection to the original black royalty from the beginning, going back to David's throne and beyond, showing that they have some type of linkage there. Very, very important, dear family, to understand. They know who we are. The sad thing is that we don't know who we are. Go ahead, Sister Claudia.
In ancient Greek, it's called the Sphinx. In Arabic, Abu al-Hul.
Yeah, Abu al-Hul.
Hul.
Abu al-Hul. We may not be pronouncing it right.
Sorry.
They stole our Arabic from us because, again, just so that people know, we used to speak Arabic.
That's right.
Okay, that was one of our ancient tongues. All right, don't think that this belongs to some Arabs that's over there in Arabia today. That was the original tongue of the black man back in the day, and we lost that as a result of our subjugation under European domination. But Abu al-Hol, which means the father of everything. Some Europeans translate it as the father of terror. Imagine.
Really?
Imagine though, but Abu al-Hol, the father of everything. And imagine, this is what black people left in that desert, among those pyramids, with the body of a lion and the head of a black man, to send a message to the future generations about who built it and who left it there, sending a statement. You see? And like I said, they were so terrified when they saw it that they tried to disfigure it so that people wouldn't know who built it and who left it there, who placed it there. Why the body of a lion and the face or the head of a black man? Wow. How does it relate to that scripture that says there's a lion asleep in Judah? And the question is asked, who will awaken him? Dear family, I hope you're good. I'm really not rushing. I'm taking my time because I think it's important that there is some attention to detail. You know, it's very, very critical that these things are understood and that we learn how popular culture is used, you know, and it seems surface, but really it's so much more. The epic story of King Kong started life as a novel written by Delos W. Lovelace in 1932 at the request of his friend Miriam C. Cooper, based on Cooper's then upcoming film, King Kong, to serve as part of the film's 1933 advertising campaign. So this is where King Kong comes from. Delos W. Lovelace is the writer, and, you know, it was then used to publicize this movie that was being made by Miriam C. Cooper. And the film, the first release of King Kong was in 1933. Dear family, some of you, I'm sure, already know. And, you know, I'll say this before we move on, but, you know, I find it really sad how many Black people, Africans, original people, who are terrified of being associated with this creature, this gorilla, this monkey, because See, the enemy, he called us monkeys.
Mhm.
And as a result of calling us monkeys, many of us now, when we watch King Kong or whatever, the last thing that we want to do is associate ourselves with the monkey. We would more likely want to sympathize with the white man, sympathize with the antagonist against King Kong, but we won't see any relationship between us and our plight and his plight. But that's a mistake, because you see, this is not really emotional. This is time for us to put on our thinking caps and to really delve deep now into why they called us monkeys, and then why they would make a movie or a series of movies like this, where they depict a gorilla in this fashion, and at the same time calling him King Kong. What does that mean, dear brothers and sisters? And when you see this fierce looking individual, you know, what does it conjure up in your mind? Do you feel terrified when you see this King Kong? What is it that you emotionally feel when you observe such a creature? This cover that's coming up, this is the cover of the original 1932 novelization. I read that earlier, novelization. I've never heard a novel depicted or written up like that, novelization. I thought it was quite an interesting word. But this is the cover of the original novel, but they say novelization, 1932 novelization of King Kong, written by Delos W. Lovelace. This novelization was released at the end of 1932, just over 2 months before the film premiered in New York City on March the 2nd, 1933. The premiere was approximately 2 months before the birth of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Now, dear family, you know, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, in my estimation, he's a giant of a man. And I know that we don't necessarily get it, but the white world, especially those in power, and when I say those in power, if you were listening and watching the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan earlier on at the beginning of the show, he talked at one stage about the 85% of the people who are poison animal eaters, and the fact that not just 85% of white people, but 85% of Black people, white people, brown people, yellow people, you know, we are all ignorant as to the reality and the truth of this world, because it's been hidden and kept from us, while there are 10% who are wickedly wise deceivers of the 85%. And that 10%, dear family, they are absolutely terrified of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and terrified of those of us who respect, honor, and follow that man, and in our own small way try to emulate what he does with the word that God has placed in his mouth, in his heart, in his mind, and then issues from his mouth to give good news on the one hand to the 85%, and to warn us, the 85%, and to give warning also to the 10%. And to, on the one hand, use that two-edged sword, which is the tongue, to cut down the wicked and to elevate the righteous. They are terrified. And I'm saying to you like this, dear family, the same way in which some of us who are ignorant and afraid of our own shadows would be terrified looking at a King Kong movie. Well, in that same way, that 10% is terrified looking at the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and he is like a King Kong to them. He is a terrifying figure because of what he represents and the giant nature of his presence in this world, in their world, which they would love, dearly love to get rid of, and don't think that they haven't tried on numerous occasions to dispose of, to destroy the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And as we speak, they're trying. But he remains a gargantuan presence in this world. And, you know, when you look at this image, I don't know if you can see, like here, you've got the Empire State Building. You've got some of these creatures that they call dinosaurs. You got this white woman here in King Kong's left hand and arm. You've got an airplane attacking King Kong, and he's got hold of it by the right wing, which is destroyed. There's a man, I think there's even one of the pilots falling out of the plane, but it's action. It's, you know, this was the novel. This was the novelized form of King Kong that was used to publicize the movie that was released in 1933. But the picture, as they say, paints 1,000 words, and it's really telling you a great deal, because here they've got him standing on top of a building, and he is wreaking havoc. And, you know, it's drawn in a particular way to be terrifying for those who love the world, for those who are a part of this whole system, who obviously, if this was a reality where there was a gigantic, forget about ape, but a gigantic presence in their midst that they couldn't deal with, think about how terrifying that is for a world like this. And this is what we are talking about today. Dear family, I hope you're good. Sister, if there are any questions, please let me know. You know, any comments that you think is important for us to just highlight, because I do like to hear from the brothers and sisters as we go through, you know, what they're saying and how they're feeling.
Well, our sister Marva Mohammed from South London says, and they cannot stop him, Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the boldness of the minister to be in a world and speak in the doom of that world. That tells who this man is. And that's what the minister represents, the end of this world.
Yes. Yes, praise be to Allah.
Praise be to Allah.
Dear family, Europeans.
I'm sorry, and she added, and who is backing him? So that's very key.
That's very key. That's very key to understand that the minister is not a man who just jumped up one day with an idea in his head. The minister is a man who is anointed and appointed by God to do and say what he's doing and saying. Really, really important, dear brothers and sisters, that we appreciate this, because, again, we hear people talking about God every day, but who really knows God? Why is it that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, in Message to the Black Man, asked the question, who is God? Because some of the notions of God being some type of spirit or spook or vaporized cloud, it doesn't cut it, brothers and sisters, because as depicted in that last image, you know, Satan has warplanes, okay? He has guns, he has bombs, he's got nuclear weapons. If you think a vaporized cloud is gonna be able to combat that reality, then we're living in a fool's paradise. The reality is that our God must be real, and he must have the wherewithal and the equipment to deal with a real enemy who has power to do evil in this world, physical evil to physical human beings. Never mind what we talked about it earlier on, the psychological elements to all of this, you know, the influence through the airwaves. He's working on all levels. But we must have a God who has the ability to deal with all of that and then some. Dear family, Europeans are great at projection. And so it's important when viewing an image such as this from the story of King Kong. This is, if you notice this image, it says Skull Island, Reign of Kong. This is like, I don't think this is like in the movie, but it's just something that they've put together. And I thought it was very important to talk about this for a little while here, because all of these skulls, it's sending a particular message about this island and the people on this island and about King Kong himself. And so I say again, Europeans are great at projection. And so it's important when viewing an image such as this from the story of King Kong to realize that the Celts, the Goths, the Visigoths, the Vandals, the Vikings, all of which are European tribes, all of them in their war making practice head hunting, as the head was believed by European people to house the person's soul. Ancient Romans and Greeks recorded the barbarian Celts' habits of nailing heads of personal enemies to walls or dangling them from the necks of horses and placing them on spikes as trophies. Now, why am I saying this? Because the idea of this type of projection is to suggest to the audience that the indigenous or native people are savage, that you find on Skull Island. They're savage and they're cutting off people's heads and they love skulls and whatever. But this is projection, because when you study the history of the Caucasians, that's what they do. Celts, Goths, Visigoths, Vandals, Vikings, they're famous for this family, famous for skull worship and doing all manner of evil to people, putting their heads on spikes, etc., etc. Read the history of the British royal family and all of the head cuttings that went on. You see, because you'll hear them today outraged over Saudi Arabia and the fact that criminals, murderers get their heads, rapists get their heads chopped off in a stadium full of people. And when the head rolls, the crowd says, Allahu Akbar. You know, they are, it's disgusting. How? Go and read British history. You think that they don't know about head cutting? And that's what they did for hundreds of years? Come on, man. Don't be fooled, dear family, by this fake outrage in the modern era, because it wasn't that long ago that many of our heads as Black people were on spikes to send a message and an example to other enslaved people not to rebel or not to go for freedom, you see, but to remain a servile people in subjugation. I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said on one occasion, and it really stuck with me and it really hit me hard. He said, if the suffering of Black people in the Western Hemisphere was known, if the real suffering of Black people in the Western Hemisphere was known, it would make a brass monkey shed tears. We haven't got a clue what we've been through, what our ancestors went through. And I say this, family, the fact that we're here today, the fact that we are here having this conversation today, having the ability to share this talk together, man, you got to look back on your ancestors and thank them, man. Because I'm telling you, family, they were strong. They were resilient. They were courageous. They were brave. They were awesome. Just the fact that you are here speaks volumes, because we didn't die in our tens. We didn't die in our hundreds. We didn't just die in our thousands. We died by the millions. Okay? There are countless millions of our people who never made it because of the type of brutality, the type of tyranny, the type of horror that we had to face. But they put this image, you see, which represents horror, which is supposed to make us, oh God, you know, I wouldn't want to be in that place, as if this is not what their history is about, because they project onto others what they really do. You know, Christopher Columbus, when he arrived in the Caribbean, the so-called Caribbean, because that's what they called it, but when he arrived in that region in around 1492, he wrote in his captain's ship's log that they had found paradise. But guess what? When you revisit his log 6 months later, that paradise had been turned into hell on earth. And they were slaughtering the native Arawak people, the native people of that region, like it was open season, chopping off their limbs and killing them because they weren't bringing enough gold, bringing enough of the commodities that were to be found in that region to these Europeans who had come off the ship. And as they came off those ships, running down the ropes, the anchor ropes of the ship were rats following them from Europe, bringing with them plague and disease that killed the people wholesale, never mind their swords and their guns and their other weapons, weapons of torture that they brought with them to destroy the indigenous people. As Africans, we weren't even indigenous to that region. We were brought there on slave ships to replace the indigenous people who were wiped out, more or less. Only, you know, handfuls of them remaining. And so I just can't go past the whole skull thing without us appreciating what the message that they're trying to send or project onto us, about our own people, about the indigenous people, when in reality, they're the real skull bandits. Here we have two images, one from a King Kong movie showing two black men made up to depict the native savage people of Skull Island. And the other image shows what was the popular myth throughout the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries of Black or native people being savage headhunters. You know, these types of images would be in magazines, in publications, and they would write these stories about Africans and native people chopping off people's heads. They would do these cartoons of white men being put into big cooking pots and calling us cannibals and all kinds of evil depictions to paint a picture and to give an impression to their own population as well as our populations who became cognizant of these types of this type of narrative, that we were indeed the savage people and they were civilized people. And it was a complete reversal of the reality. I don't know if you can see this depiction. He's got a head in his hand, you see? And it's not even subtle, but the reality is that if we're not careful again, even in 2024, you see, your children may be exposed to this type of imagery, this type of depiction, this type of movie, and whether we understand it or not, it goes into the psyche and it breeds an inferiority complex, and the people who are showing the movie are deemed to be superior, sophisticated, you know, kind, loving, modern. And here you got these savage blacks. Don't forget that experiment back in the 50s, and again they did it recently with these little black children, small children, being given a white doll and a black doll and asked which one is wicked. And the black children saying, yeah, the black one is wicked. Which one is good looking? The white one. Which one is evil? The black one. Which one is good? The white one. Which one is bad? And you know, consistently, and what that should make us to question is how insidious is this world and these societies, that small children could already be so indoctrinated that they will see somebody who looks like them as the ugly or the wicked or the evil or the bad. And so all of their aspiration now is to be other than themselves. My God, man. Do you understand how horrible that is? Go ahead.
It even goes down to food, isn't it? They have angel cake,
which is white
and the
chocolate
cake,
which is the chocolate, brown chocolate cake. And yeah, but it goes deep, because all throughout you'll find that. You know, what's a Black Friday? You know, what's being blackballed? What's been blackmailed? What's been blacklisted? And we can go on and on and on. And then it's a little white lie, isn't it?
Yes.
It's not very serious. It's only a little white lie.
It's a lie. Yes.
Oh, family. I hope you are enjoying what we are sharing today. As I said, I make no apology for taking my time with this, because you see, I say again, there is very little clarity coming in our direction these days. And I think I can speak for Sister Claudia in saying, man, we are so thankful and grateful to Allah for that human being, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. What a wonderful, wonderful human being. It makes me sad that we have people today, and if you ask them about Marcus Garvey, they say, man, if I'd have been around, I would have been with Marcus Garvey. If I would have been around, I would have been with Martin Luther King. If I would have been around, I would have been with Steve Biko. I would have been with Patrice Lumumba. And we will talk about these ancient ones and you know, these ancestors with such clarity and such love and such reverence, and they were so great and they were so good. But we got a man with us today,
That's right.
alive, powerful, kicking the devil's backside with no apology. And guess what? Many of us, see, because that's what we would have been like had we been around.
That's right.
During the time of Marcus Messiah Garvey, the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. That's what what did the Christians say? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Talking about the Jesus, because again, the Christians, oh yeah, I would have been with you. No, you wouldn't. You probably would have been like Peter. Do you know this man? No, I've never seen him. Denied. Come on, man. It's time, family, for us to step up, you know. It's time for us to realize that we're never, ever gonna achieve the dream of being free, justified, and equal until we make a determination as individuals that we're gonna stand up on the principle of truth with one that God has given us, who makes it so plain that a man full of alcohol can understand what he's saying.
They wake up.
they be in an alcoholic stupor, but then they hear the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and clarity will hit them upside the head. Dear family, I hope you are good. This is the place I'm going to show you now. This place is called Skull Chapel, and it is a church in Poland where people go to worship, and the interior walls and ceiling are covered in human bones and skulls. I'm not showing you something from the 17th, 18th, or 19th century. I'm showing you something that exists today, where people go to worship. Human bones and skulls. This is European culture. I know you thought it was us that were, you know, uncivilized and, you know, crazy. Why? Because you've been listening to that narrative. You've been following that story about Black people being savage and maniacal. No, brothers and sisters, that's not us. That's just not us. You know, it always used to strike me, you know, when they would show these poor little brothers and sisters in Ethiopia starving to death. And you would see the little children with elongated stomachs full of nothing but wind, just gas, because they had no food and they were starving, with flesh hanging off of bones. No substance to the body because it was emaciated and starved. And the mother and the father would be in a similar condition. But at no point did you see any of those people turn around and say, you know what? This is so bad that at least if I can survive myself, let me just at least eat my child. I just want you to think. See? They never did that. The children died, and then the parents died, quietly as well. Do you understand, dear family, that Europeans don't know nothing about starving to death, and that they refuse to starve to death? And that's why, literally, recently in the 70s, after a plane crash, where there were survivors in the snow, within a few days, they were eating the pilot, and then they were eating other passengers who had passed away. and maybe looking around at a few live ones to see who's the weakest, because they were not going to die if it meant that they had to eat human flesh. But they're quick to want to call us cannibals. I mean, think about it, man. You don't understand what you're dealing with. You really don't. I know. I'm talking to the skeptics here who think that Europeans and Black people are the same. We're not the same. Very, very different. Go back to the sheep and the goat. Very, very different characters. Because you know, some of us are so dumb, we like to say, oh yeah, but we're all the same. We all bleed red blood. Stop it. Shut up. Rats bleed red blood. Are they the same? You know, you got a whole lot of dogs out there. But have you ever seen anybody using a Doberman for a guide dog? No, you don't use Doberman or Bull Mastiffs for guide dogs, because their character is not that kind of dog. That's a guard dog. That's an attack dog. For a guide dog, you use a Labrador because it has a particular nature. Well, guess what? Human beings are like that. We may all look similar, 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, and a couple of nostrils, a mouth, whatever. But I'm telling you, man, the nature, the character is completely different. And in many cases, diametrically opposed. We're not all the same. And this is a huge mistake that most of us as Black people make, because we're looking at the enemy, expecting the enemy to behave or to think and to speak and to behave the way we do. No, you are at fault because you don't understand the difference in nature. And nature, you cannot change. Dear family, in the mafia, anybody know anything about the mafia? Anybody familiar with the mafia? In the mafia, there is a phrase that means committing murder for a mob family. And that phrase is making my bones, or make your bones, okay? The phrase indicates that a man wishing to become a made man in the mafia. If you want to be a made man, those of you who watched The Godfather, or you've watched Scarface, or not Scarface, Goodfellas, and some of these other mafia films, you know, part of their aspiration, part of their desire is to be made. They want to be a made man. Well, in order to be a made man, you have to make your bones. And the phrase indicates that a man wishing to become made in the mob must first make bones out of another man by killing him, thereby demonstrating his loyalty and dedication to the crime family. Making your bones. This is how it's done, dear family. This is what they do. This is what it's all about. I hope everybody is good. Skull and Bones, also known as the Order 322, or the Brotherhood of Death, is an undergraduate senior secret student society at Yale University. Yale, okay? And all the universities have got these fraternities. And this is located in New Haven, Connecticut. Members are known as Bones Men. The society has been accused, and these just a couple of little things I just plucked out to share with you, but there's so much on this, you know. I mean, I encourage you, dear family, when it comes to different words or strange words or words that we don't understand, get your dictionary, man. Go on your phone, check these things out, learn. Let's become a studious people once again, begin to study, but also, you know, look into the Skull and Bones Society, because it's deep. where you've got presidents who have been members, George W. Bush, John Kerry, all of these people, all of them, skull and bones. Okay, Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. Members are known as bones men. The society has been accused of possessing the stolen skulls of Martin Van Buren, who was the 8th president of the United States. They've been accused of stealing the skull of Geronimo, who is a famous Apache military leader and medicine man who fought American colonization. They've been accused of stealing the skull of Pancho Villa, renowned Mexican general and revolutionary fighter in the Mexican Revolution. In January 2010, Christie's, which is the auction house, Christie's auctioned a human skull with links to the Skull and Bones secret society. They're buying and selling skulls and bones. This is their emblem, that's their symbol, the skull and bones with 322. And there's lots and lots of debate and arguments over what the 322 means. I'm not going to waste time going into that today. But I'm emphasizing this because, dear family, when they try to give an image of native people, Black people as headhunters and as savage, maniacal people, understand that it's pure projection, because what they do is what they project onto other people. I hope you get it. Now, skull and death cult worship is a big deal among Europeans. From the Pope of Rome and the European Jewish skull caps to the most popular tattoos worn all over their bodies, as well as depicted on their Hells Angels motorcycle patches. You know, you see the Hells Angels with the skulls on their patch. On military insignia, they got it on their lapel, skull and bones, and on the sides of military vehicles. You've observed, study Europeans, study Caucasians, man. They love that symbol. You see this one over here? This is the pirate symbol. When they were raiding each other's ships and robbing on the high seas, that's the flag that they flew. And if you notice, the skull is kind of happy and smiling, because this is something that they relish. This image here, this is August van Mackinson, a German field marshal in House of full dress uniform prior to 1914, because the Nazis in World War II, they always would wear a skull with bones called a death head, okay, on their uniform. But this is prior to 1914, prior to the First World War. Okay, this guy, August van Mackinson, a German field marshal in his full dress uniform, and he's wearing the Totenkopf or death head on his fur Busby hat. If you look, you can see, you may not be able to see it properly, but it's a skull and bones on the very front of that fur Busby or Busby hat, because that's who they are. That's Europeans for you, okay? They understand who they are. They understand that they're a part of a death cult, okay? And they love it. They really don't make no apologies for it. That's why some of us, you know, we're all shocked. Oh, how can they tolerate what's going on now in Palestine? Because that's what they do. That's what they do. And like I said before, the only difference between what they're doing today and what they did yesterday to the Aborigines, what they did to the people in what's that other place? In Tasmania, which is next to Australia. I mean, I think they said they wiped out all of the native Tasmanians within 75 years. They were all gone, okay? And that place has been taken over by Europeans. See, Australia, New Zealand, North America. Where are the Native Americans? On some reservations, they've got a couple of casinos that they've been allowed to have, and so many people are alcoholics. I'm not suggesting that everybody's like that. You've got people there right now trying to fight for some recognition and to get back some of their land and to go free effectively, because they are colonized and destroyed as a human reality. And we can go on and on. All of these places, that's what's happened to them. The only difference between then and now is that now it's been live streamed to your mobile device in your hand. And you can see it. You can see it happening on social media every day. Mainstream media is ignoring it because mainstream media is part of that culture of destruction, lying, maiming, stealing, robbing. Death is a way of life for them. It's nothing. You don't let these people fool you, man. Crying crocodile tears and paying lip service to freedom, justice, and equality. That's just more hoodwinking going on. They don't care. They really don't care. Dear family, let's have a look. What's people saying?
Well, when you finish, there is one question.
Yes, Pirates of the Caribbean. Anyone been following Johnny Depp case? Yes, dear family, we have deliberately belabored this point somewhat because we really want you to get the fact that the vast majority of what we see in the epic King Kong movie saga is strictly symbolic of something else that carries a greater and more powerful meaning beyond the monster movie entertainment factor. And that is that this franchise is designed to subliminally depict the secret history of the white world versus the black god. This is what this is all about. Do you remember Public Enemy saying fear of a black planet? Come on, man. Think, brothers and sisters. Because King Kong is not about some giant gorilla. King Kong is about something else entirely. But they knew and they predicted and they knew that as Black people, the vast majority of us, we wouldn't identify with King Kong. And if we did, we would do it secretly. Secretly, when we saw him overturning those cars or grabbing one of these little white men and biting his head off and flinging him down, we cheered, go on, King Kong, go on, man, go on, we're there with you. but don't make it a public identification. So where did the word Kong come from? Kong is of Chinese or Eastern origin and means glorious. That's what Kong means. It comes from China. King Kong then means the glorious king of the East. Do you know where we're from, family? Do you understand that we're an Eastern people, that we are from the southern hemisphere of our planet, and that's who we are? In other parts of the world, Kong is a wasp-inspired version of the Congo. In modern terms, that means the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, or Central Africa. Understand what the Central Africa is, to be at the center of that continent and what that means, the type of influence that that place is supposed to have on the totality of the continent, and why that part of Africa is so rich in mineral resources, and why the enemy has to be in there continuously destabilizing and disrupting any smooth flowing of a system down there that's run and organized by the indigenous African people. It's not an accident that Congo is in the turmoil that it's in. That's by design. Because as far as the WASP is concerned, they call it, or from their perspective, it's the African jungle. And that's what they want to keep it as a, if you remember recently, I think it's P.O.W.E.R in Europe called our part of the world a jungle and their part of the world a garden. Yo, man, you got to understand what's going on here. See this jungle thing? That's what they want us to believe Africa is, and that's what they love to keep Africa as a wild, untamed wilderness, a wild, untamed jungle where they can go on safari and do their thing, man, and steal our wealth while we struggle to survive there, because that's all you can do in a jungle. By the way, the meaning of WASP is white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Okay? And so this is their perspective that what we're talking about here is the African jungle, but in reality, we're talking about the Congo. And they know, because they're the ones who have now coined that term, King Kong, and they know that really what it means is the king of the Congo, or the king of Central Africa. Dear family, I hope you are following. Now, you know, I came across the fact that I didn't know, because I've never seen Godzilla versus King Kong. I never saw that movie. But in my research, I came across that and I thought, oh, that's interesting. You see, Godzilla versus Kong. And the origin of Godzilla, the Godzilla story, is Japanese. But the name Godzilla is the English translation. The original Japanese name is Gojira, which is a combination of gorilla, and Kujira, whale. Oh, I thought that was very interesting, the whale, the ocean part, because, you know, Britannia rules the waves, you see? And what does the dictionary say about Godzilla? It says a particular enormous example of something, a Godzilla of a condominium tower. That's like an example, you know, a Godzilla of a tower block. A fierce or frightening person or thing. I put there the white man. You see, because Godzilla versus Kong, that's the black man versus the white man. Godzilla because you see again, dear family, what we don't appreciate about white people, and I'm talking now about the rulers, I'm not talking about your little friend who lives next door and she's so nice, or the guy that you go to work with and you car share with him. Stop it. I'm talking about white rulers. They see themselves as God. They see themselves as a God besides God. They see themselves challenging God. And this is what Godzilla versus Kong is all about. We're going to move on. I hope you're following. Dear family, even Marvel Comics had to get in on the act with Titano, the super ape, taking on Superman, who of course is none other, again, than the white man, who is depicted as this awkward, shy guy who fell from space as a baby and then realizing his superpowers, dedicated his life to the rescue and saving of white humanity. Whenever you ever seen Superman rescue a black person? Just think about it. They had Richard Pryor in one of the Superman movies. I don't know if he did anything for him. But, you know, he rescues and saves white humanity against all enemies, domestic and foreign, and even universal enemies, because according to Donald Trump, during his presidency, America built Space Force. All of this, dear family, is relevant to this movie breakdown of King Kong. Just in case there's a threat from outer space, or maybe even a threat from the living Black God himself. I thought that was quite an interesting picture on the front of that comic, where it's like, this gorilla has got green rays, Titano, the super ape, looking at super, and I thought, there's what they're trying to suggest is what green with envy, that this black man is looking at this Superman, looking at the white man, and we're envious and jealous. Who knows? But this is the battle, the war is played out in so many different arenas. And again, whether you appreciate it or not, you think that the vast majority of our black children looking at a Marvel comic is going to be siding with the gorilla, or they're going to be siding with Superman. Come on, man. This is some deep stuff that these people are doing here. And so part 2, dear family, to be continued next week on the Imagination show. I hope you've enjoyed what we shared this week, and I hope you found it interesting, and we'll go a little bit deeper, inshallah, God willing, next week, okay? But before that, let's just have a look at this.
And lo, the beast looked upon the face of Beauty, and Beauty stayed his hand. And from that day forward, he was as one dead.
So you're ready for this voyage, Miss Darrow?
Sure.
Nervous?
Nervous? No. Should I be?
Imagine, if you will, an uncharted island, thought to exist only in myth.
Whoa! There's the wall ahead!
That's where I'll shoot my picture.
It's deserted.
Of course it's deserted. Place is a ruin.
Yeah. Find her! Find the wall!
It's on something. What took her on?
If you haven't found her in 24 hours, there'll be nothing left to find.
Dear family, I hope you will join us next week for the rest of the breakdown. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Did
so
you
much.
did you have a question that you wanted to read
just
out?
very quickly, because I know time is right. And this is from James Bradley. Random question: are the white or light-skinned Asians, Japanese, Chinese, Korean mixed with European blood? How did they get from dark to light? I know the Aboriginals from these countries were black.
Yeah, that's a pretty heavy question, but the reality is that We made the white, ultimately. We made the yellow. We made the brown. We made all of them approximately 6,000 years ago. And then they spread to different parts of the planet. And then over the years, what's happened is that the originals in those parts of the planet have been pushed out, or they've been ethnically cleansed, or they've been destroyed. Then at the same time, there's been a lot of what's called race mixing, much of it deliberate. Like during our enslavement, the slave master would go into our women all the time and make mixed race children, some of which he called half caste, some he called mulattoes, some he called octoroons, some he called quadroon, and all of it is to create confusion and make us to not be sure who is who. And so this is a process that's been going on for a very long time. The original Chinese are black, the original Japanese are black, the originals all over the planet were always black people. But what's happened over millennia is that these populations have been mixed, or have been ethnically cleansed, or have been watered down in other ways. And so, you know, like for instance, in a place like Argentina, for instance, if you notice, the Argentinians, they don't have any black players in their football team. That's because they were ethnically cleansed, the black people from that nation, and they were in South America, and they were denied the ability to, because of the level of racism there, they were denied the ability to be partakers of that particular sport in that way. Unlike Brazil, where you see so many of the players are black, and so many of the other South American countries, they're black. And so, you know, that's a very, I can't go as deep as I would like, but that's an overall picture for you of how this has come about, why you have so much mixed people now, because the enemy is hoping that through that he can create enough confusion so that we don't know who's who and what's what. But what I would suggest to you, the questioner, is take a look at a man like Bob Marley. You see, who had a white father and a black mother, but he made it abundantly clear who he was. You see, and that's, in the end, it doesn't even come down to skin color, you see, because I've said it before and I'll say it again, we got many who are black like me or blacker than me, and they are big time white supremacists. So don't get caught up on the color thing, because we got light skinned black people who are black, and it's about their attitude, it's about the mentality, it's about their spirit. And so what we have to learn to do is to really discern the spirit as opposed to just looking at the color. Okay, so that's what I would say in answer to that question. Thank you very much for the question. Dear family, looking forward to seeing you next week, inshallah. Please take care of yourselves, look after yourselves, be good to yourselves, be kind to yourself, be loving to one another. May Allah bless you. Assalamu alaikum. Go ahead, sister.
And don't forget to tune in 24/7 to the Final Call Radio. Don't forget to subscribe to the Final Call newspaper. Don't forget to tune in to the Sunday lecture, noi.org. May Allah continue to bless you all. Don't forget, just keep feeding yourselves.
That's right.
Right guidance, the truth. The truth will set us all free.
That's right.
Thank you all for tuning in. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, beloved. Take care, family.